I have to interject this quote because it's one of my favorite from Carl Jung. And he says, "It is said that no tree's branches reach the heavens without its roots being planted firmly in hell." And I love that. Like, that resonates with me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, especially with your story.
Right.
Welcome to the Focal Flip Podcast. Every week we take a deep dive into the mystery and stigma behind mental health and explore real-life stories of struggle and triumph. We aim to educate and encourage others as we bring together a diverse group of guests. From the streets to sanctuaries, classrooms to boardrooms, mental health does not discriminate, neither do we. Prepare to laugh, prepare to cry, prepare to be changed. Let's get into it. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Focal Flip Podcast. It's your boy, Mike. No introduction needed. This guy's been in how many episodes now? 5?
I think about 5.
Yeah, 5 episodes. This is a fantastic friend of mine, one that has been an integral part of my recovery journey. And I'm blessed to have him back. We've had a topic that we've been trying to tackle for quite a long time, very long time for him. So here's John McNeely. John, welcome, bud.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mike.
No problem.
My pleasure.
No problem. It's good to have you back. Did a lot of sports stuff while you were gone. So we've had a lot of coaches on here, and it's been pretty fun. Done a lot of coaching stuff and learned a lot about sports and different types of psychological factors and mental performance in sports. And so, now the basketball season's over. I'm going to check out some other sports, but we're going to dive back into what we're most passionate about,
right,
which is the mind and spirituality.
Yeah, the depths of the human soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so we've had an episode that we put out last year called The Psychology of the Soul, and that one had great.
Yeah, I was really happy with the response to that.
Yeah, the views were incredible. Which is cool because that tells you a lot about what people are probably thinking, and that's probably interesting. So
right,
a lot of the stuff that you and I cover, it's super deep. And so what we found is that it's really hard for a lot of people to follow, but we've got this skill set of being able to kind of dumb it down,
right,
and give you different perspectives and just flip all that stuff in multiple different ways, because there's many quotes that you have where you're like, there's 1,000 ways to look at things. We choose one, we manufacture our own misery out of it, those kind of things.
Right.
So the biggest thing that we've been chatting back and forth about, because it was like, all right, we need to make sure we word this correctly.
Yeah.
Right. And we were saying, okay, is this going to be on like the psychology of God? And a lot of us in recovery go on this spiritual journey. And a lot of times people are reluctant to do so.
Because of all the stigma the word God has attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that too. And I grew up in church, and I have a wonderful understanding of God, but then I had a different understanding of having a relationship with God, the universe, nature, actually, being present, that kind of thing,
And an experience.
Yes,
God,
the actual experience.
Right.
And so that's why today's title, to all of our listeners, all of our viewers, today's title is "This is on Man's Ancient Relationship with God." And I thought that was the coolest thing, because John had a few different things that he was going to go with as far as, hey, what do we title this thing? And then, we just have so much respect for the psyche and for spirituality and just for all the origins of everything in life.
Right.
We want to make sure that we respect it, and that we're educated enough to speak on it.
Right.
And so I'm fired up that we're actually going to do this today.
This is a really exciting episode for me because it's so complex, and there's really a lot of pressure for me to be able to articulate it. There's just so much, and it goes so deep. Yeah,
man. And that was the thing. Like when John first got here, I'm sorry for telling, if I'm not supposed to say this, I'm going to do it anyways. But when he first got here, it was like, this is the one. This is the one I've really been preparing for. And he cares so much for it that it's a very delicate topic. So he really wants to make sure that we deliver well on it.
Right. Very passionate topic for me.
Yeah, very, very passionate. I mean, you almost lost your life. Your life is saved, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fact.
Yeah, you had to go to the depths of hell,
right,
literally, and understand things, and it's come full circle now.
I have to interject this quote because it's one of my favorite from Carl Jung. And he says, "It is said that no tree's branches reach the heavens without its roots being planted firmly in hell." And I love that. That resonates with me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, especially with your story.
Right.
Especially with your story. Awesome. So here we go. We're going to let this one rip, y'all. At the end of this episode, make sure you give us a subscribe, follow, like, hit us up on social media, send us messages. We're on social media more than we probably should be. So definitely reach out and hit us up because I think this is going to shake you up a little bit and just at least change your perspective on things and allow you to change your daily walk in life. So here we go. Man's ancient relationship with God. All right. So we're going to break this sucker down into 4 sections. Okay. And we've got this in 4 questions and we're just going to see how the conversation rolls with it. So you ready for this?
I am.
My guy, give me a high five first. Let's do this thing, man. We're back at it.
Let's do it.
I'm fired up to be back at, back in the trenches of the psyche and spirituality. So here we go. First question, y'all, that we're going to ask here is, what are the origins of man's religious belief and man's quest for a union with God? So I'm going to repeat that question again. What are the origins of man's religious belief and man's quest for a union with God?
I think before we start, I think it's important to clarify that the best way, I think, to absorb all these things that we're talking about is to back away from the stigma of the word God.
Okay.
And also to back away from whatever personal beliefs you have or don't have regarding Western theology.
Okay, that's a great that's a great precursor to this.
But to answer your question, the origins goes back to the origins of man itself.
Okay.
I mean, man has been expressing himself spiritually and religiously back to the ages where Neanderthal walked among us. It is the most ancient and consistent of all man's affirmations. It is an integral part of man's psychology, the quest for the union with God. It is as deeply ingrained in man as is a child's instinctive fear of the dark. Every civilization, every nation, every tribe, every clan since the beginning of mankind has had this deep inner spiritual experience that he communicates and portrays through mythology and his image of God. But it all originates in the deep spiritual experience.
So elaborate on that. If we go back to the origins of man, take me back and timestamp that for me. Put date to it. Well,
I mean, mankind's been around for somewhere between 200,000 to 300,000 years.
No, and so what I'm saying, a lot of the people that study the Bible and stuff that are Christianity, they get caught up on.
That's why I said it's best to divorce yourself from.
Theology. I know that for sure. That's why I was just always I like to cover that anyways because a lot of folks get into this number of years things,
right?
And so we're really dialing this thing back,
right? Well, I mean, the evidence for that is 50,000 year archaeological finds of Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon burial sites show the corpse adorned and buried with tools, weapons, food items, and carved deities. I mean, there's evidence of 50,000 years of man's relationship with the infinite and the afterlife and his conceptions and mythologies of God. Again, it's the oldest of all man's affirmations.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I had to separate it when I was in recovery. You know what I mean? I really did.
Yeah.
Because I actually was just super hard on myself and thought that I was just being punished by this almighty creator.
Yeah. You see, the thing is that
when I was going through the dark stuff.
Absolutely. Man's images and beliefs in God all originate from the spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So until you have the spiritual experience, when you start talking about religions and beliefs in God, it's like the finger pointing at the moon. Without the experience of the moon, it's all irrelevance.
Yeah. Oh man, I mean, I've experienced it. So
Right.
I've actually lived that experience. I've done it artificially,
Right.
and then I've done it authentically.
Right. And that's the reason we do it artificially, because that piece, that integral part of our psychology is missing. So we try to fill it.
We do, dude. That's deep.
And we destroy ourselves in doing so.
Yeah, we do. We do. I coach for a living, and that's, a lot of the common theme comes back to us and this negativity bias. And when we get hung up on that one thing, and it can destroy us and isolate us and literally put us in this kind of shell mode where there's nothing but a shell of yourself.
Yeah, we get locked up into the torments of the mind because we don't have a larger perspective of the soul.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Let's roll in the second question. What do you think? Great first question. Great way to start this episode. Second question here. What is the psychology of man's own spiritual essence, and how does it apply to his image of God? So I'm going to repeat this too. Section 2, segment 2. What is the psychology of man's own spiritual essence, and how does it apply to his image of God?
That's a great question, but we've actually touched on a little bit. Carl Jung was brilliant in his observations. I mean, he wrote books, The Psychology and Religion, Modern Man's Search for the Soul. He wrote so much about the psychology of spirituality. So in his brilliance, he realized that the human being evolved. And he still has character traits of early animals, even going back so far to the reptilian stages of evolution. Okay. That's evident in the human body.
Okay.
Right? That he still has ancient traits, remnants of these traits within the human body. The same is with the psyche, because the psyche evolved as well as the body. So the psyche still has ancient traits within it. And one of them is the spiritual essence. Consider, 50,000 years ago, the spiritual experience of man, after a ceremony of hunting mammoths. That spiritual essence is still there, that deep, raw, divine experience of the soul has been the most consistent throughout man's history. So the psychological aspect of the spiritual experience is deeply embedded in mankind.
Yeah, it is.
So the second part of that question, how does that apply to God? It has to be expressed. So how do we express it? In our images and mythologies of God. Okay,
explain.
Well, how do you express that overwhelming spiritual experience? How do you do it? You can't. And the only way for man to put it into words is through his images and mythologies. Whether the modern man experiences the Holy Spirit in his soul, whether the Native Americans experience their spirit animal and visions, it doesn't matter what image or form or story or myth you apply to it. It all originates in the experience itself.
Wow. Is that why we see, multiple different religions or these great characters of good faith, these messiahs? Because, this is such a deep topic. You look at how big the globe is and how big the world is.
Right.
And then you look at kind of like what you're saying now, a lot of different folks have for us, it's Jesus. You've got Buddha, you've got all kinds of different things.
Which is an expression of the experience based on your cultural upbringing what's been conditioned within you. So when people argue about whether they believe or don't believe in God, I find that rather amusing. You see all these debates, atheism versus theism, and it's comical to me because neither one of them are talking about God. They're talking about whether they believe or disbelieve in an image of God, which isn't God.
Well, it's within you.
Exactly. It's the experience of the soul within you.
So that right. If it's the experience, it has to be a genuine, authentic walk.
Absolutely.
Because that's the only way to express.
And that experience,
you know what I mean?
That experience can't be ridiculed or denied. It's been written about since the origin of documented writing. It's part of man, that divine spiritual experience, the divine revelation of the spiritual experience.
Why is it that people have bad spiritual experiences? Because in my opinion, at the time that they're going through it, they don't realize it's a spiritual experience that they're having.
It is, and that's a really interesting and complex point. They both originate from the depths of our soul. So yeah, anguish and misery can be a very powerful spiritual experience as well.
Yeah, it is.
And that's where we get the dichotomies of good and evil.
Yeah, there we go.
You know?
Yeah. Talk about that.
Well,
because that's a great little segue here, and then I'll get into my next one. Segues of good and evil.
That goes right back to man's ancient psychology as well, remnants of it. As man huddled in his caves at night, the danger and threat and evil of all the predators that come out, and then they have salvation when the morning light, dark, light, good, evil. These are just all ancient remnants of man's psychology.
Why do we obsess over the polar ends of each?
Well, that's just it. I don't think we obsess on it. We just get driven to one or the other, and we experience either hell on earth or heaven.
Yeah, it's going to be our perception of how we...
And there's so much that applies to whether what you experience, your attitudes, your outlooks, your perspectives, your conditioning, your traumas, your fears. It's just an endless myriad of things that affect whether you experience the light or the dark. And the reason why is one of the ancient and consistent of all man's spiritual wisdoms. Know thyself.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that shook me up when we first hung out year one of recovery on know thyself. Just to be honest, because
we are the creators of our heavens and our hells.
I know, but see, when I grew up growing up in church, the way we looked at that as saying we are the creators, that's looked at as bad because we're trying to be worldly and stuff.
Yeah, it's just basically you have no understanding of yourself.
Yeah, I didn't really just understand what it meant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that it was wrong, it's just that I didn't understand what it meant.
Right.
And then things would confuse me through religions and faith and being saved and baptisms, and it's it was confusing for me because it was I was outwardly reaching, but I was never transformed, or I was never really genuinely walking.
Here's the flaw in
with
that.
Spirituality. You see what I'm saying? So I felt like I had this thing on this pedestal that I was trying to accomplish, and if you're a perfectionist at heart, I couldn't accomplish that. So when I stumbled, I was just wanting a bailout from God or what.
Here's the paradox with know thyself is that most people reach for the light, the absolute, pure light and love.
Sure.
But the answer to know thyself is to know your darkness.
Yeah, I understand that.
To know your traumas and your fears and what is preventing you from the light, which are the torments of the mind. So we try to escape the torments of the mind by reaching for the light, and you'll never find it. To know yourself is to know the depths of your darkness and your fears. It's to make it real simple, people are always seeking their happiness, But that's not the answer. The answer to finding your happiness is finding all the reasons why you're unhappy.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of the search.
Oh, yeah.
That's the paradox.
I know, and it's so painful for people to do, and it really doesn't have to be, because that was my thing, is I was looking at my negative thoughts and my bad thoughts as being very bad.
Right.
Instead of being, maybe all of us think like this.
Yeah.
But instead, like, I was like chastising myself,
Sure.
and like being very hard on myself about it.
It's because
and now that's what I do professionally, is teach people that teeter-totter effect, because I like you. This is kind of, we birthed this thing through our thought and our psyche and our recovery, self-discovery process.
Right.
You know? So yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's just super fascinating for me, because that's what it was like. And it's nothing against any like religions or faith or churches and stuff. It was just more of like my experience of like, they have the great framework, but then I was like so hard on myself, and I didn't need to be. And they weren't like telling me that. But if you look at like churches and stuff, like back in the old days, it was more brimstone, like brimstone and fire.
And again, I got to interject this Carl Jung quote, because as we're always seeking the light, and we put so much emphasis on our belief and faith in the light. But to the Carl Jung quote, he says, as long as religion is only belief and faith in outward form, and the religion's function is not experienced in the soul, nothing of any importance has happened. Mm-hmm. So as we're reaching for the light, we're moving farther away from the depths of our soul, which is the only place the spiritual experience can occur. We're reaching for something outside of ourselves. When it's in here.
But isn't it everywhere?
Depends on what kind of philosophical concept you want to put on it.
I'm just telling you an honest question, because anybody else would be thinking the same thing.
Well, I mean, again, that answer, it's a valid question. The answer is only found in your own conceptions and beliefs of
your own perception of reality.
Yeah.
It is.
In here, out there, good, evil, right, wrong. They're all dichotomies of the human mind.
Yeah.
That get us farther away from our center.
Yeah. It's been an interesting walk for me.
Yeah.
It really has. I'm a Jesus guy. That's my guy. But man, when I went through recovery and I started understanding that he was in me and I just needed to uncover him.
Yeah.
Or to people that don't believe in Jesus or whatever, like whatever it is that you do believe inside you. Yeah. Like whatever it is that you do believe inside you, it is within you, and it can become uncovered. And that's the thing. And like when you look at the dark stuff, like you said, where we are reaching for the light. And I think that's the best framework, but we can always reach for the light, but you have to understand this opposite end of the light, which is dark.
The roots in hell.
Yeah. And that which is dark, it's just like competition. Like if I was playing in a game or I'm in business and I have a competitor, okay? It's kind of my responsibility to understand my competitor.
Yeah. Know thy enemy.
Bang. You see, so like, and that's everywhere. So in doing so, like basketball, we're scouting, prepping all this stuff, going practices and doing all these things, preparing for what they do well and what they do not well.
Right.
So that's the way I look at this whole thing, today when I'm trying to teach people about how kind of peeling that onion, like we've talked about, is that this thing swings on a pendulum.
Absolutely.
It swings on a pendulum. I use the teeter-totter effect too, because when we simplified this thing, because I'm an emotional being. Mm-hmm. I'm an emotional creature. Like I can go to polar ends of the emotions. But I never took the time to understand each and then bring it together to find balance in life.
The only way to stop swinging on a pendulum is to find the center by understanding them both.
That's going to be a good clip.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And that's what I get to do professionally now, which I love. Some people it takes longer than others. But watching those epiphanies, or what, AA would call it psychic change, or that spiritual awakening, or it's like, when they first are kind of like, whew.
Yeah, powerful.
It is incredibly powerful. Folks, just to give you all an idea, for me, you can't see it in frame, but I like to read, and I read a lot of books, and I have learned so much from reading while understanding how to live present in life. And that's been very tough for me because I had to be structured, organized, planned, and I was never present. I was just chasing other things. I was being a perfectionist. It ran me thin. I didn't have bandwidth. It was exhausting. I became an addict, full-blown addict and alcoholic. But then, like, the more I just came, instead of being obsessed about that thing, I became obsessed with learning myself.
Right.
And man, did that lead me to spirituality.
Right.
Like I've had spiritual experiences before, but like I'd also been in religion and been upset by people within religion and kind of hurt, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I had to get a new understanding and concept of God.
Right.
I really did. And like all these different books helped me so much too, because we were piecing these things together for me. Like, and that's for all of you viewers and listeners too. Like, it's your own walk. And you're going to piece things together as you grow and as you mature with age and time and experience. But I'm telling you, the most important thing that you can do is be present now. I struggle with it sometimes, but I'm much more present today than I ever was. So like Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, there's multiple of these books where it's like, all right, it's all in being present.
Right.
And what I'm noticing is when I'm real, authentic, and I'm present in the day and in the moment, these weird things happen where I'm in tune with my soul or the universe or God, because it never leaves here, but then it answers through another person or something. And I'm like,
you're in tune with your center.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yes.
Even when I get disturbed.
You don't have to convince me.
Yeah, I know. But even when I get disturbed, like that, I am not on that far end of it anymore.
No.
It's more of like, I'm aware of it.
And you're aware you're becoming off balance.
Dude, fact.
Yeah.
And I can hold it in check.
Right.
And then I noticed, like in the past when I would run from things, like, dude, trying to tackle that stuff all at once is just a nightmare. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Carl Jung.
I was getting ready to go into him.
Carl Jung talks about it more as the center than he does anything else.
Yeah, talk about him. Let's talk about Carl Jung and his interpretation of spirituality. Because I'm a big Carl Jung fan too. I like a lot of psychologically astute people, a lot of different philosophers. I study all of it because I just wanted to see how it all worked and how it coincide with one another. So talk about Carl Jung.
I'm not going to be able to summarize, the theories of Carl Jung because he's got like 20 volumes and then 4 additional volumes of letters and lectures. And I mean, he is prolific.
Yeah. Red Book is my favorite.
Oh, it's like reading it is like a trumpet blast to the soul.
Yeah. I'll let you explain. But Carl Jung helped me. John helped teach me a lot of Jungian principles, and it really helped me bridge gaps from my thoughts to my dreams and interpretations and meditations and soul and spirituality, all that. That was a big way to bridge the gap for me.
Yeah.
Because I was able to look at it from a thought perspective and not attach too hard to it.
Yeah. I think the biggest revelation I've gotten from Carl Jung is that, he talks a lot about the psychology of the spiritual experience. Right? And what he focuses on is that anytime you take that spiritual experience and you start to arbitrarily postulate what that is in the image of God or, your beliefs and all these different things, all you're really accomplishing is further separating yourself from the experience. Because God is the experience. Anything beyond that, and you're just pulling yourself away with the mind's own conceptions and beliefs and imagery, which isn't God. It's the mind's interpretation. Here's the paradox of God. Anyone who's ever had any deep spiritual experience will tell you that God is beyond the mind. It is ineffable. ineffable. You cannot describe God.
It shakes you to your core, dude.
It shakes you to your core. But in the very next breath, they'll tell you the origins of God through the mind's own imagery and beliefs. If it's either ineffable or it's not, why do we try to have all these beliefs and images and conceptions and religious concepts when that isn't God? It's the mind's interpretation of the experience of God.
Answer that. Why do we?
Why do we? Because it has to be expressed. And the only way to do it, which man has done since the dawn of time, is through his imageries and mythologies and anthropomorphisms. We create God in our own image. But that isn't God.
Where do we go after we die?
It's beyond the mind. What happened before the Big Bang? I mean, there are questions that will run you in endless circles,
I know.
which brings you farther away from the experience of God.
I know, I'm trying to think of how to keep navigating this for our listeners too. Because it's like I'm trying to be. I can think on that level for sure, but it's like. So what can people do, man? So let's get into that real quick. I love, number one, thank you for chatting about Jung. We could talk about him forever. We could have our own episodes for like
endless episodes.
Yeah, it's amazing. So sometimes I joke with people. Like I feel like sometimes with Focal Flip, I'm like tricking you to spirituality, and I kind of am.
Well.
And I just don't put like a name or label on it,
right.
Because then they experience what that is. Yeah. And then they kind of look at me or you or whoever's coaching them, and they're like, what is that? Yeah. And it's hard to really say, okay, well, this is what all these things have been labeled before, because like a lot of people don't want to hear about Jesus. They don't want to hear about God when they're in recovery.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so now it's like, sometimes they'll come in here and we'll walk through their experiences. Like you said, disturbances. Right. That's what I do. I have folks follow and focus on their annoyances, disturbances, all of those things.
They have to.
That's what will lead you to a better understanding of who you are as a person.
They have to understand their darkness. They can't run from it like we've been conditioned to do our whole lives.
Yeah.
Push it out of your head, which means push it deeper down inside it.
So how can people get this experience like that we have?
Right.
That's because it is we're going to talk about God explore your darknesses, but there's more to it than that. I mean, it's, yes, you got to go explore it, but there's a lot of action stuff that comes in that becomes awareness, and where awareness has to be a hovering type thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that, because it's not an easy thing to do. It's almost like you have to die to yourself too.
Yeah. All I could tell you for certain is what not to do. And in my opinion, what not to do is focus primarily on religious belief and faith.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because, well, for all the reasons we talked about.
You tell me not to go to church?
No, because you can have, let me back up, because that's a valid point.
Thank you.
You can have belief and faith, but without experience, it's irrelevant. So my point is that belief and faith in and of itself isn't the answer, because the experience of God, that religious experience, is in the soul.
It is, man. It's a walk.
It can't be found in the belief and faith and imagery of the mind, no matter how hard or how fervidly you believe. Mm. So Saint Gregory of Nyssa, he was a saint. I think it was 1100s or 1200s, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he said, any attempt by the intellect to circumscribe the divine mystery only leads to creating an idol.
Ooh, idolatry, okay.
Not in making God known. So we're worshiping a golden calf, if we apply religious belief and faith without the experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going with it. I'm trying to balance it for everybody. So
yeah.
You know what
It's a very delicate.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why, and I just like, we live life honest, open-minded, and willing.
Right.
You know, I don't know, for the people who listen to all the episodes, like, you know, my story with it, and you know how many different people I lined up with in order to just find my tune with the universe, you know? And then I was able to come back and kind of make my own reality of it. But I think it's just important for people to understand, because, you know, a lot of times when you're trying to do good and everything, but then nothing's good happening is probably because your intentions weren't accurate. And that's the stuff where I like to get where on authenticity. Like for me, when I was younger, you know, I was going, it was a good framework, go to church. But this whole time, like I was, you know, saying I'm a believer and doing all this, you know, doing all this stuff, but just
a believer in your mind's own imagery.
Yeah. Like I would literally pray like religiously for like other people and stuff, but then for myself, you know? And then like I would sit and wait for those prayers to be answered. And then when they weren't answered on my time frame, or if they weren't answered at all, then I grew angry. You know, does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. And here's the scary.
It was very frustrating.
Here's the scary thought.
It's because I didn't have a good concept of God.
Exactly. And there is no good concept of God beyond the experience of God.
Yeah.
If all you have are concepts and beliefs. Here's the scary thought. If all God is to us is our own belief and faith in our own conceptions and imagery, aren't we in essence worshiping ourselves?
I sure hope not.
I mean, if we're just worshiping and have belief and faith in the mind's own imagery, we have belief and faith in the mind's own imagery, which is of ourselves, so we're worshiping ourselves.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the experience, which is beyond the self.
Well, yeah. So that's all self-talk, self-driven.
Right.
Why are these experiences so powerful when we step out and are around other people with that spirituality, that spiritual presence, when we are out with multiple people instead of just us experiencing life like right here? Like if we're out.
Well, it is an individual experience, but a group of people can have their own individual experience. You know.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say is like, how is it that your soul and spirit can like feel somebody else's soul and spirit? Like when you're out, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how you can feel like you're in tune or you're out of tune. You see, because like
that's a difficult question. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It is, but what I'm trying to say is like for example, if we go to a meeting or if I go to a group setting, how come whenever you come into a group setting, you can vibe well with other people? How come in recovery like rooms, it's like, hey, unity service, recovery, where it's the power of connection with other people. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do.
So if this is all our experience in here, okay, why is there so much power in unity? Why is there so much power in the collective?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of psychological answer for the collective, but personally, I think that once you find your authentic self, you can sense when others are coming from their own authentic selves.
Dude, it is the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Why is that? It is so. I just wonder why that is, because
for me,
I have that sense too.
Yeah, for me, like
everywhere I go.
For me, you know, I've become so in tune and understand my own ego, fears, you know, insecurities, anxiety, that if I'm with someone, I can smell that, and I can smell they're not coming from their own authentic self. I can sense. It's like a sixth sense.
It is weird.
It is strange anomaly.
It's weird, dude. It is so weird, especially when you have that feeling about maybe a particular person or something,
right?
And then like a year later, it like comes to fruition, and you're just like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
You know, that's the stuff.
A lot of that, what we intuit and what we sense, is on the unconscious level. Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, I mean, modern neurology demonstrates that 95% of all brain function is unconscious. So we pick up unconsciously on body language, facial expressions, all these different things that we communicate with one another that we're not conscious of. You can, you can just sense where someone's at.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. That's a fact. All right, let's go to our fourth one. You ready?
I am.
Okay. Fourth and final, we're going to bring this sucker home. Okay. If not religious belief, what then is the path to harmony between the mind and soul to experience a direct union with God? I'm going to read it again.
Sure.
If not religious belief, what then is the path to harmony between the mind and soul to experience direct union with God, a direct union with God?
You know, I don't know that I can say there is any one path, you know. But again, the problem with using religion as the path is that a belief can't be organized. An experience can't be organized. If you try to organize a spiritual experience, it becomes a religion. It crystallizes. It becomes stagnant. Now you're no longer talking about the experience. You're talking about the dogma of what the experience was, and that's
so. The religion's an avenue.
Yeah. So again, to answer your question, I personally believe, as was my path, is that the only way to man's inner spiritual essence is to dive within. And to dive within, you have to get through all of the distortions, fears, delusions, and traumas of the mind to uncover the soul. You know, they say the kingdom of God is within you. How are we ever going to find God if we can't find its kingdom? If we can't find our own soul? Because that's the origin of the spiritual experience. As to what further origin that may come, you know, that may originate, that's beyond the mind. So why go anywhere except in the center of your soul and abide in that? It's the only place you can experience it. Everything else, when we talk about it, is mythology.
Yeah.
That's all it is. We're trying to understand and describe what cannot be understood by the mind, and the mind so desperately wants to understand it, it just starts creating all kinds of, you know, stories.
Yep.
But you can't find it in the story. It's only in the soul.
So you got to find your soul.
You got to find your soul. And,
so
and
how do you embrace your soul?
You won't have to embrace it. It'll embrace you.
That's good stuff, John. Got anything you want to end on?
No, not at all. It's a good podcast.
This is a great episode, man. I appreciate you very much.
It's my pleasure. It's my passion and my pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. All I ask that you hit like, hit subscribe, tap the bell. We love you all. We're out.
Thanks, buddy.
So guys, you should like and subscribe and like hit that
Okay,
I can't get it.
okay.
I'm not used to this.
Hey guys, subscribe to my dad's video and just like the bell.
Hit that like and subscribe button, hit that bell.
And stay tuned. Love y'all.
100%. Love y'all. We're out.
I love that.